Roll call?
Yes, I do, Joe.
Okay. Did anybody get any communications from DEEP? Okay, that answers that. Anything from the Department of Aquaculture? Nothing.
No.
Bill, Department of Health, anything we need to know about?
Nothing this month, Joe. Just a reminder that we're still in a water emergency due to drought, but outside of that, nothing to report.
Any idea how much more rain we need to have that lifted?
I think right now the reservoirs are, give or take, a percentage or two, around 42% capacity. So it would probably take a good, I'm going to say maybe 6 to 8 or 10 inches of rain to kind of get us where we ought to be.
Okay,
So the rain that we've had recently is just enough to kind of keep the status quo, but it hasn't really improved anything.
okay. Harbor Commission, Jeff, anything we need to know?
Well, yeah, just that on November 16th, I believe that's the date, there will be a joint meeting of the Harbor Commission and the Shellfish Commission to hear Eversource's latest plans for bringing the electric lines under the harbor from the west side or underneath. And now the plan, as we understand it, is again to go underneath the visitor's dock rather than to avoid it by going to the north. So that's on November 16th. And that's not yet, I don't believe we yet have a formal application. I think this is for informational purposes. But there still needs to be a regulatory review by DEEP, by the Corps of Engineers, and by the Connecticut Siting Council. So we look forward to that meeting and giving that proposal a proper review. The other topic, and I saw the email from Diane Lauricella, which is very, very significant, is the continuation or the presentation of the draft plan for the waterfront industrial rezoning. And as we understand that, a significant part of that rezoning will focus on South Water Street and the marine commercial area. So this is something that the Harbor Commission is much interested in. And in fact, the involvement of the Harbor Commission goes back to the 1980s when the imposition, if that's the right word, of the marine commercial zone. I think that was in 1987 or 1988. That represented the completion of Norwalk's municipal coastal program at the time. And then the following year, the zone was modified. And then at that time, the DEP at the time sued the zoning commission for violation of the Coastal Management Act. So this is very interesting. In a lot of ways, it's history repeating itself. Not that we anticipate another lawsuit, but it's a proposed rezoning of the. I'm assuming that this is what it will lead to, a proposed rezoning of the Water Street area. So that's the other topic, and I think those are the two main topics to look at. And as far as the railroad bridge project, which of course is the Eversource work, is intimately related to that, we still have not heard from the Corps of Engineers or from the U.S. Coast Guard regarding their permits that must be issued. So we keep working on all these things. And then there's also the master plan, I believe, that's being worked on for the Parks and Recreation Department. And that's going to involve, of course, the major waterfront parks, and the Harbor Commission will be providing comments on that. And then we also received notice that, I'm sorry for the background noise on the train, we also received notice that the Harbor Commission's proposal for studying public street ends ending on the harbor, and looking at the existing character of those street ends and what opportunities might exist for increasing public access or public use of those street ends, we had a proposal to the Connecticut Port Authority for an initial feasibility study, which was approved. So the money won't be provided until December, but that's a project that will involve looking at opportunities for access, public access to the harbor. So,
Okay, just as a point that Jeff brought up with the Eversource, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but when power lines are put underground, underwater, they generate heat so that it will, depending on how deep it is, it could have a thermal impact on the temperature of the Norwalk River. And that area around the Washington Street Bridge tends to be warmer than the area outside of the harbor. And any extra heat that's given off will only drop dissolved oxygen levels more than what they are already. And that could have a serious impact during the months of July and August. And I don't know how many people on the Harbor Commission are aware of that. And even people on the deep that are involved with this may not be aware of the fact that you have a thermal influence of high tension wires that could impact shellfish beds as well as migratory fish. Because the warming temperatures could screw up the water chemistry enough that fish that use the chemistry to navigate with might get lost. So they don't have GPS, they don't have Waze or anything else like that of getting back to where they want to go. But especially now that they've done all the work on dam removals, this could have an impact on those animals too. So we got to stay tuned for those meetings. Okay, let's see. Diane, you had promised us MS4 suggestions.
Well, I must say, when I saw this on the agenda, I do not have them ready. I have had a very tough month, so I will have something in December. It's along the lines of not just public participation, but a lot of my review has been along those lines. And I was trying to dig up, Joe, what you sent to the city, but I just didn't have time to go into City Hall, and they have, I'm sure, a copy of your email. You could not find it, I guess. But anyway, so if anyone else has any thoughts about it, get in touch with me. You know my email and my phone number. I have nothing to present tonight.
Okay. Bill or Dick, anything on water testing in Wilson Cove? Is that done for the season?
All I can tell you is we ran Wilson Cove 3 times, and two of those times were dry weather, and the accounts were just about perfect all the way up. Then we ran one in wet weather, and we got very high counts coming from the pond, and also down the discharge from the trolley line pipes. And I gave those numbers to Bill.
Okay. Bill, anything else on that?
No, that's it. I mean, it just seems that at least a lot of the higher bacteria counts may just be in part due to rain runoff. I think there's still some issues upstream along Martin Luther King. So I know Harbor Watch is working on sampling up there. So that's still to be determined. That's going to take some time. But I think a lot of the higher levels are primarily due to just rain runoff.
Excellent.
May I just, oh, go ahead. You go first, John.
Well, real quick, where is the pond?
The pond is
ahead,
at the north end of Wilson Cove, about as far north as you can get. And it's on the right-hand side.
Okay, thank you.
And it feeds on runoff from the land. And because of the goose population that's there, as well as other bird populations, And the fact that we have had almost no rain. When it did rain, you had a tremendous amount of,
Yeah, it's all.
Yep.
down.
yep.
Yeah.
Diane, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see, because on occasion, we may have people from the public, I wish there were more, coming to listen to our good work. When we talk about any kind of sampling that we are doing, if we could be clearer about the parameter that's being tested, because laymen, would say when Dick or anyone says, oh, well, it's clean, that is not really accurate, because it's for one or I think two parameters, maybe, Dick, is it oxygen and E. coli?
All we've tested for is enterococci. We haven't done physical testing in there. So it's enterococci bacteria.
So if we could say that, I think that would be more helpful.
I
also.
just said it.
No, what I'm saying is for even our Telesco services and the public, and if anyone looks at our minutes afterwards, because we don't want to, in any way give a false sense of security or a false sense of harm, just a thought.
That's a good point. Thanks, Diane.
Anything else on that? Okay, I haven't heard anything as far as the Connecticut DEEP consent decree for past violations. Has anybody else picked any other information up? No? Okay. Then on to new business. Diane?
Just one thing. This is budget making season in the city. And so this is a point where the department heads submit to the finance department their initial operating and capital budget requests. So this corrections of the reason why the consent decree was issued are, of course, going to cost money. And it might be, I just got into a habit of following some of the key issues through the budget making process, but this would be a great time for our committee to encourage, the city to raise funds, and we could even offer to write letters of endorsement if it's for grants in the future. But it's very important that the Board of Estimate, which is our finance body, and the Common Council and the mayor know that we of course want to see these problems resolved sooner rather than later.
Any other comments under old business? Okay, new business.
Joe, this is Joe. Joe, this is Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff.
Oh, new business. Okay. No, new business is where I would make some comments.
Okay, let's start with number one, Jeff. How many went to the Recreation and Parks meetings?
I
Okay,
did.
Jeff, did you go? Louise, did you
I did
go?
not go.
Okay,
I couldn't go. I had to be in New Haven that day.
okay. They would,
I went to the online part, but I didn't the day before, but I didn't feel. I'm sorry I missed Saturday. I think in person maybe was better.
You missed a huge turnout, 8 people.
yeah,
That's terrible.
well, it was, and the irony was, we addressed the PFAS issue in the proposed turf areas, and they accepted it, but they didn't say anything about it. But what also was addressed was tree coverage for Norwalk and a lack of open space. And Diane, Dick, and I all hammered them on this. And the fact that Norwalk is continually adding more and more large developments, and that is taking away from the percent of tree coverage as well as lack of open space. The way they determine that is how much open space there is per 1,000 people or 10,000 people. They have a set standard. But we are in a diminishing return. And until the city puts a hold on this, we're just gonna look like an area that has less and less and less to offer the people that are moving here. And I thought that was, a very interesting way of addressing it. And I know Diane and Dick both spoke up. They both let their opinions be heard. And we were kind of surprised that they were aware of it. But we don't know if it's gonna make their recommendations at all. So we'll see. Diane?
So I have at times some different views about the amount of development we are having. I do think that the city is attempting to balance with every new bit of development, which definitely is impervious surface for the most part. They must put in modern plumbing. They must put in due to building code, but also wherever they're building, they put in best management practices for stormwater management. It is not as often as I would like, and I usually, when I speak for myself, if I attend the public hearing, I ask that they add green infrastructure, green roofs, which is still something that has not been embraced wholeheartedly yet, and the zoning changes where they opt out of it instead of opting in. I'd rather that be a standard, that developers have to give a good explanation why they cannot put in a green roof or more rain gardens. For a while, everyone was throwing in a rain garden. It was like and they still are doing this. Oh, okay, that's one rain garden. We've done our environmental work for now. And that's often, it's helpful, but not helpful enough. So as far as this meeting goes, I too was struck by how few people there were on a Saturday. I thought that there would be a lot more people. So I'm going to do some homework on what the consultant was given by the city and others, the Common Council, helping, Hart tell people. But on the PFAS issue, I had a discussion with Robert Stowers, who is the new, well, he's been there almost a year, but well, half a year, a new director of Recreation and Parks. And specifically because of the Broad River situation, and it's close enough to the drinking water source of the first taxing district that Wellfield already has PFAS problems that have been in the news about a year or two ago, and it's still continuing to be a worry because the EPA is finally doing their job of setting standards in the near future. But anyway, I think that we were going to write a letter, and I would just suggest that we continue that effort. I know everyone's really busy, but maybe before December, if there's a way, even before Thanksgiving, if we could circulate the letter that we all, that was, I think Louise had a template, and then we weighed in, and maybe that would be a good thing to send to the Recreation Parks Committee of the Common Council, the mayor, the head of the Common Council, others, because I get a sense that Mr. Stowers, who I'm really impressed by his Seattle bona fides, he told me that he has dealt with this issue a lot. They have 31, he started out with 27, but he said 31 artificial turf fields in Seattle. So he knows all about the pros and the cons. And I respectfully disagreed. I said, I hope that he would be an open-minded person, because there are many aspects that have never been done a deep dive in Norwalk, and I'll finish shortly. And that is the environmental health issues, the environmental issues, and the sports injuries, which of course we as a team are not going to get into, but they're real. And I asked that he consider doing a side-by-side cradle to grave financial study of natural turf or grass to artificial turf, but also have an expert, a neutral expert, look at the health and environmental issues. Now, I have asked this of the Board of Health and the health director last year when they were doing their budget. So it's budget time again, and I'm going to ask again because we have that PFAS issue. He thinks that he could utilize the latest and greatest technology to avoid PFAS and other issues. I told him it was not just about PFAS, but that happens to be a popular issue right now. And so at the very least, what we came up with last time, and I think John Crespo, is that in our letter, we should insist that they have a neutral party sample and do a leaching test and other tests. So I
Could
would say,
add-
let's not give up yet.
Could I add to that a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
I've done a lot of digging into PFAS, and it is very bad news and becoming more so. The federal government, EPA, did have a limit of 72 parts per trillion. It has
Yeah.
now been reduced to 0.02 parts per trillion.
Right.
And Louise sent you all an email with a little blurb in there, a film, which is kind of raggedy, but it sure makes the point. And if you want to go further, look up Parkersburg, West Virginia, and see what DuPont did down there. It is unbelievable. And how little they cared and how little they tried to help anything that happened to people. They were finally sued multiple times and had to pay out huge fines, ultimately walked away from the project and gave it to another chemical company. And they're catching all the fines now. So it is very bad news. And I talked to Dave Carey, who's head of the Shellfish Commission in Milford. I said, Dave, what do you think? He said, Dick, is there any way that they can catch runoff? I said, no. They're going to lay this stuff down. It runs off. He said, then we're against it along with you. And he said, we're willing to take a stand on that. So I think we need to, I would follow up on Diane's suggestion. I wouldn't ask, I would demand that we do an independent study and that we see the results, because 2 laboratories, I've called York and out east from here, York Laboratories, they will do PFAS. So we have a source to get some of this tested. I called Pace out in the Midwest. Pace says we have 4 laboratories. They are backed up with PFAS for 3 months. So this is going to be a big thing. And now we've got UConn out there getting ready to do testing for shellfish and everything else. And my guess is we're just hearing the tip of the iceberg. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, we have 3 major challenges. We also now have rubber tires. There's a product from them called 6-PPD quinose that comes out of tires. Is supposed to be lethal to fish. The Trout Unlimited is having a seminar on that Tuesday evening, which I'm going to go to. And they make a very good case for killing off freshwater fish. And now they're beginning to look at what happens to saltwater fish. So we have that one. We also have, which hasn't gone away, neonicotinoids, that great pesticide that's out there. The state didn't negotiate a cessation of that. We still have it. 2 people in the state legislature killed it. The states around us have all banned it. It is a very, very bad pesticide. And so we have 3 major challenges, and we shouldn't lose sight of any of the 3. That's my lesson for tonight.
Thanks,
Yes.
Dick. Louise?
I just wanted to add, I don't think that we really should I don't know. I don't know if there's any point in focusing on testing. We know that Field Turf, the company that Norwalk wants to use, recently put in a PFAS-free field in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. In Portsmouth, a group cut a corner of the field off, had it tested, and the entire thing is full of PFAS, and they're suing that company for false advertising. So the testing has been done. There is so much evidence. I think it's maybe a waste of time and money to do more testing. We just need to put before the Rec and Parks and the Common Council all the information that is already out there, and that is easily done. There's lots of data on this. There's lots of tests. There's a professor at Notre Dame who's tested dozens and dozens of the fields. They all have PFAS. So there's a lot to argue. But I just wanted to add on in terms of our letter. I am still working. I am about to send that letter from the Norwalk River Watershed Association, but I think Joe already sent a message from this committee. So maybe we,
But I only sent it to the head of Recreation and Parks.
okay, so would you want to sign on to the larger letter that I had sent
Absolutely.
around? Okay, all right, so I've been working on it,
Yeah,
making it better. And Diane, I know you sent me comments and I spent like 45 minutes today looking for them. Could you,
Okay.
do you have them? Could you send them to me again?
sure.
Okay.
So what is your deadline on when you'd like comments?
You know, as soon as possible. I think Dick has worked with me on the letter and it's already like really long. I'll send the newest version and appreciate any comments, but I'd like to do this in the next couple days. Or, you know, whatever, a week if you need time.
By
But
Tuesday, by
It's the
Monday?
same letter that I sent a month ago, so I haven't made, I've just made some changes, but they're not too significant. But I just go through all of the reasons, and I did make it more specific, and I mentioned specific towns that have used this same company. So anyway, I think I'll send it out to you guys again.
I would just like to point out before we leave, some of the things we get from PFAS. We get bone cancer, liver cancer, kidney cancer, and lymphoma. So that's just the start. And if you want to take the time and read about our friends down in Parkersburg, West Virginia, you won't believe the story. And my only point of disagreement is with Louise. I think if you do local tests, and they don't have
Okay.
to be big, that has a big impact versus
Okay.
bringing somebody else's numbers in.
There are also months and months and months to wait, so it will delay the thing.
John,
No, I see that point. If we do our own tests, yeah, I agree.
John,
Oh, yeah, there's Diane, there's ways to engineer the playing field such that storm runoff will be captured. But in order to do that, you have to like put a liner, and then you have to capture the storm rain, and all that requires a lot of money. So there are ways,
Right.
but I doubt that they'll be.
It's also
willing to
very
put all the
difficult
money.
to clean the PFAS out of the captured water. So you'd have to have a system with a,
You have to have a system to
Right.
treat storm water, of course.
Diane,
So I did speak with Robert Stowers about that, about the fact that at the very least, the city needs to look at capturing runoff and treating it, especially on this particular site, because it is close enough and it is upstream from the little stream that flows into the well field. I do think that I would like to put forth to all of you whether we suggest a summit meeting of this committee with the mayor's office and the health department and Recreation and Parks, because I just get a sense that they think they could, so far, this is the 7th field. And Mr. Stowers told me he thinks he will do a side-by-side study, but we have to make sure that whoever's comparing and reviewing the available results, the data and the information is neutral and is qualified. And I hope he will, I think he will attempt that, but it's going to be an uphill battle because quite frankly, I'm thinking, where was everybody for the other 6? I've been trying, but we
Yeah.
are there now. And I think this is a very important location because it is so close to a receiving body near enough to the river, as well as a well field that already is impacted. So I think that I would love to see our group have a letter that is more substantive. And I thought that's what Louise was doing, but maybe. you
yeah, I
changed
mean,
it.
I have that.
you
It's
wanna-
substantive. It is. I
Yeah,
just
no,
thought, I thought maybe Joe's comments preempted that letter, but if we want to still just sign on to the letter, I will get it to you guys. Also, keep in mind that Stanford is going through this same thing. Wilton is proposing putting new turf fields right in an aquifer recharge area at Allen's Meadow, right next to the Norwalk River. So our river system is getting this from, it's not just Norwalk. But Stanford had recently, what I think we should do, the major experts on human health, environmental harm from PFAS and I've forgotten who the third one is, but the same ones in the video that I sent you were invited to Stanford to speak to, Parks and Rec and the mayor and to whoever the decision makers are in Stanford. So I can send you the video of that meeting. I feel like we gotta have to do something like what they just did in Stanford in Norwalk. So
Yes.
that makes it easy because we can get those same people to come and we have that model to look at.
Right,
I'll send
so,
you that.
so I would like to make a proposal that we, that this Water Quality Committee arranges for a summit with the details to be worked out before our next meeting, where we, similar to Stanford and some other places in the state, have had major discussions with, including experts, because we're not going to be able to do this through back channels only and an
But
email
Diane,
here, an email
I
there.
think it might also make sense to talk to a couple of the common counselors that are also concerned about this
Of
and
course,
coordinate.
yes, yeah,
Coordinate. Let's coordinate with
of
other
course.
allies in the city about.
Yeah,
yeah.
so why don't, first, I just wanted to put forth that we have a summit. It could be a public meeting on it, but a summit with the mayor's office, who's the leader of our city, and then select and important people that have dominion over deciding whether another artificial turf field will be in place, including people from the sports industry, our sports. But we make sure that we have it before the end of the year because they're doing their budget. We may have to have it in January to get it all together, but I just wanted to put forth that we consider having an event or a summit to discuss this meeting and put out on the table the facts, pros and cons, and included would be some experts on both sides, but an
Joe, I'd like to add, there's a very good film out, a documentary called Dark Waters, that really shows the downside of this thing and how DuPont went to a farmer and promised him that they'd put a clean landfill on his property or they'd take part of his property. He lost all his cattle and then 100 cattle, and then they started getting sick themselves, and it was PFAS. So that story is another one. I think we should try to get that film and have everybody watch it.
We've shown that in Ridgefield. You're right, Dick. And there's also a documentary that came out before Dark Waters that is also good called, I'll send it to you. It's also good. It's a different part of this.
It's
So-
called The Devil We Know.
Devil we
Devil
know.
We Know,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, John.
Now, one thing that we have obligation is that we have to match the polluted runoff, very different levels than what a manufacturer of PFAS poses a threat to the community. So we have to make sure that we are not, we have to look at polluted runoff, and I think people have, as Louise has said, and others. So a manufacturer of PFAS or someone that uses it is important for people to know, but is not comparative, in my opinion, to polluted runoff of a artificial turf field. And I'm just saying that there is plenty of data that talks about polluted runoff and exposures within the breathing zone of a artificial turf field beyond PFAS. But since PFAS is popular, let's go start with PFAS. People don't know what it is, but they've heard of it, just like PCBs. And the thing is, there's different degrees of risk with different chemical compounds. So anyway, I put up on, again, I'd love a second, is that we, within the next month, put together by January, a summit about this topic. That gives us time to.
I think that plans for something like that might already be happening. I think before we vote to take the lead on setting up a summit, we should talk to other people that are working on this to make sure that we're coordinating with efforts already happening. That's what I would say.
I have a suggestion. Because of the how late we are in the year, let's get Louise's letter out and with a closing statement of, we would be more than welcome to meet with all of you and have a round table, so that we can discuss this intelligently before affecting the health of more Norwalk citizens. And the other thing I wanted to ask Louise, you may know, I don't. Do you know if Wilton has ever tested the water for PFAS, especially what could have come down from the wire mill in Georgetown?
I don't know if any testing has been done.
Well, I know that that site was under order by the federal and state government, and they had someone that was going to develop and went out of business for a lot, waiting on the permits from the government. And they've done a lot of extensive testing of that site. I visited it when I was a regulator. So
okay,
there's a lot of data available, but as far as PFAS goes, I do not
No.
know.
Right,
None.
and see, the whole thing is PFAS is a fairly new issue.
Yeah.
And when they were going through that with the Georgetown wire mill, people weren't PFAS wasn't raising a red flag.
That's
Now
right.
it is.
When
So
was
it's
the
a-
wire mill in operation? Like, when did the wire mill close? What year do we know?
About
I
15
don't
years ago.
know.
About 15 years ago.
Oh,
It was
more
still,
than
it
that.
was
think it
still
was older than
operating.
that,
It was
Dick.
more than that. Yeah.
It was more than that, Dick. It was
That was more than that.
it was closing
I
in the
stand corrected,
80s.
Joe. It was more than that.
I know, we've all been, in the 80s, it was closing. And I don't know when it officially closed down, but then they were going to develop it. There's a lot of information and data on all the things they tested for. Is there a reason why you think they used PFAS? They probably
I
did.
feel like it's too old to have had PFAS.
Well,
Anything?
they, in the process of making wire, you use a lot of lubricants. And PFAS
but-
is a key ingredient in the lubricants.
So is
Mhm.
PCBs. So
Yeah.
And in the plastic coating.
yeah, they checked. Anyway, it's a good thing to check. But again, we have to be measured about, okay, that wire mill is many miles north. And have they tested for various things? We can certainly find that out, but that is in Wilton, in Georgetown, on the border of Reading. And again, I'm not saying it's not a thing, not an issue, but related to what
Well,
we are discussing, I do think, Louise, if you could put me in touch with whoever these mystery people are, and I have a feeling I know who they are, but let's work together to put together a nice discussion.
Yeah, I
instead
don't
of-
know. I don't
instead
know. I
of,
just think we should find out, yeah, what's happening.
Yeah, okay, well, can we
Yeah.
talk offline so that we can move this along?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely.
Great.
Yeah. I have one good news thing to just slip in here since we're talking about ball fields. That Beyond Pesticides has funding from Stony Brook Farms to do some like pilot and model organic ball field or playing field management. And they're doing some in New York City and they're doing some in Norwalk. So we're going to have, it's like 3 or 5 of our fields managed in this way that would be, which is really going to be great. It's going to be a model for the future pesticide-free playing field management. So just, Norwalk is doing some really good things. It comes out of our passing the pesticide ordinance, restricting pesticides on municipal property. So we're moving in like the right direction in a lot of ways. I just wanted to put that in there as a balancing good news thing so we don't all leave with our sad faces on.
Good.
Hey, the number 2 in new business.
Ju-
Recommendations.
Joe, this is Jeff. Might I say something about what you just talked about?
Go ahead.
And then I may lose you on the train here. I'm sorry, but a couple of weeks, and I'm responding to some of the things that Diane mentioned. A couple of weeks ago, I participated in a discussion with the people from the Norwalk Tree Alliance. And that may have been the same Saturday that you had the meeting you're talking about with Parks and Rec. But there was a nice walk along Calf Pasture Beach and Shady Beach. I think there were only 4 other people or 5 other people besides myself. But we talked about the importance of trees, the water quality benefits of trees, especially in the coastal area, and especially in the urbanized part of the watershed. And I think you had mentioned it, and I don't have the report in front of me, but there was a report prepared that identified Norwalk as having the poorest tree canopy of any town in Fairfield County. So that again, it points to the need for planting trees in the coastal area and especially in the urbanized part of the watershed. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm talking fast because I may lose you. Excuse me.
You know, Norwalk from the MLK Fund project, I don't know the proper name for it, has $300,000 to plant 300 trees. So in South Norwalk. So that is starting to happen. So I think that the city really has.
Yeah, I just muted myself because of the loudspeaker, and then I'll stop talking in a minute. But Diane mentioned that the green roofs and the green infrastructure, and we may have talked about it before, but Stanford has something called a stewardship scorecard that's incorporated into the zoning code, I believe, and that allows developers to essentially get, for want of a better term, extra credit based on the number of environmental initiatives that are incorporated into the proposed development, and that could include green roofs. So I think that's something we might want to take a look at. And then, and again, talking quick because I may lose you. This isn't this agenda item, but the chairman and I met with the director of Harbor Watch last week, and we had a very good discussion about the monitoring program in Norwalk Harbor and how the funds that are provided by the Harbor Commission, the Shellfish Commission, and the Health Department are utilized. And so the director, Nikki, agreed or looks forward to having a more in-depth discussion at a public meeting, which might be a meeting of the Harbor Commission or the Shellfish Commission or the Water Quality Committee. But sorry if I lost you.
You're still there. Jeff, you're still good.
So.
Well, I better stop. I better stop talking now. It's getting loud on the train. But thank you for listening to me.
Mr. Chair, yeah, in Norwalk, they have a similar green scorecard for the transit-oriented development changes that were made in that zoning, and they're still redoing the other zones, all the other zones. And it will probably go to public hearing next year, but I would love to see this kind of thing in all the zones as an opt-out instead of opting in. And in the TOD, the transit-oriented development, if people put in bike walk related things and more trees, they get to build more stories, and that could be a conflict with other issues. But take a look at the transit-oriented development zoning changes that were made recently last year with the city of Norwalk. East Norwalk was the last time they studied it. So it's moving the needle slowly in that right direction, but it sure could go faster.
Yes, it could. Okay, back to number 2, under new business. Last year we struggled with this. I think it'll go a lot smoother this year. I'd like to have recommendations to move forward to the council and other community leaders that we as a committee make for them. And obviously PFAS is going to be at the top of the list. But there are other things we've discussed in the meetings. If you could put 8 or 10 of them together, send them to me, and then I'll see who has common ground, and we'll winnow that out. I'll get it out to you, and then we can decide what we send and who we send it to. Now, is there anybody out there in the public? Diane?
Before we go to public comment, I have 2 announcements that I think.
I just asked for public.
There looks like there's no one in public, Joe.
Okay. Diane? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Joe. I thought public comment was at the end, but okay. So number one is I attended some Zoom classes galore. I'm sure many of you do this. The first one was yesterday. EPA will have a series of, and I just learned about it at the last moment, preparing communities for how to engage in EPA's venture towards setting a PFAS drinking water regulations. It was somewhat eye-opening. I think they're moving too slow, but there's a lot of information. I will send to you all after this a link with a docket number that has lots of information about PFAS. So it will help us inform us for whatever we work on, either as a committee or individually. The second thing that is good news and should be useful for the city of Norwalk, as well as our group and any of the Harbor Commission, is the Yukon Clear, CLEAR acronym we've talked about. They're developed a watershed mapping tool that it's not as user-friendly. They did a demo the other day, but it gives us hope that they have actually mapped every watershed and sub-watershed. And there will be a way for us to literally take a look at our watershed and sub-watersheds in our city and any town and equate certain attributes that could help us in land use planning. So I will send you the link for that under separate cover in the near future. It's called the Watershed Mapping Tool. I'm sure Louise and Dick might know about it already, but anyway, I will send it to you. It was interesting.
Thank you. Okay, reading and approval of the minutes from October 6th. Are there any changes that anybody's aware of that need to be made?
Nothing.
Okay. Can I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So move.
Okay, Dick, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay, the minutes pass. Now, next meeting, I will not be here. Next meeting is December 1st or January 5th. Now, I don't know where we're gonna be on December 1st as far as moving the PFAS along, but would somebody be happy to take charge of that meeting? Diane?
Sure, and if we decide we need to meet before the end of next year, I'd be happy to help.
Okay, if there's nothing new that comes through that we need to address, would most of you be okay with going to January 5? Yes, no? Okay, Dick, are you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So that answers that.
What's that? We're not going to meet on December 1st?
No, if there is a pressing issue that comes to head by December 1, you'll meet then. If
Okay.
not, January 5. And I'll keep in touch with you, Diane. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So before you do that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to announce this. At 7 o'clock, there is a public hearing about money for a tree master plan. I think it's the Common Council, Economic and Community Development of the Common Council. They usually meet on the first Thursday at 7. I didn't know if any of you on this call know about this. I know that WestCog did that study of the canopy study. I thought they did a pretty thorough job, but they're asking for, going forward, a tree plan, which might be different. I'm going to inquire about it in about 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It's $150,000 for a tree master plan. I'm all for master planning, but I'm hoping that they won't repeat what Westcog did. Westcog did a lot of background data, used GIS and other tools. So do any of you know anything about this?
No. No, and I am very much in favor of tree planting. And at one point in my career, one other teacher and several students and I harvested trees from Connecticut Forest with the Department of Forestry's blessings. It was close to 180 trees. We planted them around Brian McMahon High School to create noise barriers and wind barriers and so forth. And Parks and Rec that summer mowed everyone down. And these were not 6-inch trees. These were 4 and 5 foot trees. When we started school in September, there wasn't one standing. So you can understand why I wince when you start going down that route. You know, it's going to take a lot of collaboration. And I know Louise has run into issues with that in the past, and it took a lot of coordination. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is a tree master plan, which will include planting plans.
I understand that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll send, when I find out a link, I'll send it to you.
Yep, and I had gotten clearance from the mayor, I'd gotten clearance from the head of Parks and Rec, and I had gotten clearance from the Board of Education that they were gone. And put a $sign on 180 trees, plus the labor to put them in. And it was a lot of money and time. And the kids were devastated, to say the least. So can I have a movement to adjourn? No one? Okay, Diane, John, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. If I don't see you in December, I'll see you in a happy new year. I'll be in
Thank you.
touch.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.